AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host, Mark Kelly, brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career.
Welcome to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly. My guest today is Kenneth Conroy. Kenneth is the VP of Data Science at Finn.ai. Welcome to the show, Kenneth.
Hi, good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about how an Irish guy is living in Vancouver in Canada, firstly, and a bit about your background too.
Right, I guess a bit of background on myself first. So I went to Maynooth University, or when it was NUI Maynooth, to do my bachelor's in computer science and software engineering. And from there I went to DCU to do a master's in software engineering. While doing that master's, I did a thesis on kind of managing data. And from that I was offered a PhD position, candidate position within DCU under the Clarity Center for Sensor Web Technologies. As part of that research, I was kind of looking at a framework for building heterogeneous sensor data into meaningful content, so to allow other industries or other applications to make meaningful sense of sensor data that's kind of placed on different parts of the body or measuring different things that aren't all connected to each other. As part of that research, I needed to get into AI, I guess, the machine learning side of things and clustering of data and discovering what all this data meant at a higher level and allowing domain experts to build that on top of the system so they could find meaningful insights to what they were working on. So as part of the Insight Center, I was working on sentiment analysis mainly, and analyzing Twitter streams and finding insights about how people were talking about different sports stars, for instance, or politicians over time. I'm working with a team there to build the SentiSense project, along with Adam Birmingham, one of your previous guests. So I decided there was a bit of a change in order. My wife is a applied behavioral analysis practitioner, I guess. Behavioral consultancy, it's not that well funded in Ireland, and as a result, we came to Canada where it is well funded and evidence-based practices are quite popular. We came over for that reason, and I landed in Vancouver and kind of fell into a position as a chief data scientist at a travel media company. At the time, it was recommending different things to do in different cities, so it's like a recommendation engine kind of system, as well as a few pivots that happened within that company meant it turned into a travel media company where we would produce content and promote that content on platforms like Facebook. So my role was along the lines of being able to detect what's the most optimal way of advertising what we were making, as well as finding the most effective things we should be creating content for. From there, I moved to Finn early last year, so I've been here about 18 months to lead their data science department. At the time, there were 10 people. We're now up to 55 to 60 people. I'm not sure of the exact figure right now. My team itself is about 8 to 10 people, depending on how you subset it up. We're kind of leading the drive for conversational assistance.
So that's been fantastic growth in such a short period of time, and you've had a variety of different roles since your time in Ireland. So what does Finn.ai actually do for most people that might necessarily know about it?
So Finn.ai is a conversational assistant platform for banking industry or financial services industry. So most of our customers are banks or credit unions. We are deeply embedded in all things banking, whether that's how you ask about banking, how you perform banking transactions, how you recommend things to your customers via banking. So our platform is a combination of the conversational AI side of things, which is how we understand what the user wants to do, married with what you can actually do within a bank or potentially could do within a bank. So we built out this an entire conversational design around how you would interact with a bank and access all of the things you can already do through talking to a person in a branch, or possibly on a phone, or possibly through other platforms like mobile banking.
Here at Alldus, we want to make the hiring process easier for all. Whether you're an employer or an aspiring employee, we have the service for you. For full-time work, Alldus will partner with you to find the best person for the position. Using both our network and our rigorous qualification process, we ensure that only the best talent is shortlisted. We will manage the process and work with you to select our most suitable candidate for your organisation. We also offer excellent temp hiring services. At Alldus, we provide a great opportunity to help you and our candidate make the right choice. The contract period is one long interview for your full-time opening, and the extended experience with our consultant helps you make the best decision. Alldus International is here to quickly help you find the best AI candidate.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little about some of the challenges that you're actually looking to overcome day to day? Because for some people that don't necessarily know how to actually go about building a chatbot, and some of the kind of most repetitive tasks that maybe got involved, and there's some obviously automating some small, simple tasks, but then obviously people are so diverse and so different. What are some of the metrics around customer satisfaction that the chatbot produces, and just maybe just general things you kind of do within it?
Right, yeah. So there's a lot that goes on. So for us, we have a lot of metrics to measure how our platform is performing for our different customers. There is a challenge involved in communicating the methods and how the system works overall. There's a bit of a change management that's required to apply a solution that's not always 100% explainable. It's not the same as code that is free of bugs in the same way that AI and natural language is interpreted differently, and confidence values may not be high enough. So in some cases you don't get answers. So explaining the difference between how that operates in the real world to somebody who's used to developing software for 20 years, perhaps within a bank that's quite closed off and quite slow moving, and it's quite controlled, can be a bit of an issue. The second issue is more related to what we do, is around how to explain what an intent is, or how utterances map to intents, utterances meaning the questions that the users ask, and how you define content to answer the plethora of different ways you can ask questions in a well formulated way, in a way that makes sense for the end user. So like a course conversational assistant might just say, okay, anything that mentions this topic or this particular product gets this massive spiel of a response. But that's not an ideal situation. You want to be fine-grained where you can be fine-grained and answer and kind of find what the seed and what the user wants based on their utterance data. So defining that and defining that in advance for banking has been like our history. That's our value proposition. Essentially, we've already mapped it out for banking. So you're a new bank and you come to us and we say, okay, we know 90% of your customers are going to ask these 90% of things, and we can do that really well and identify that really well. Let us help you write the content on your side so that it maintains your voice and your personality within the bot as well. So that's the kind of hidden part of conversational assistants that you might not realize when you pick up one on day one. It can be quite counterintuitive in that you can get access to a service like a Dialogflow, and I create a bot in a few days, and it's like, oh, it works with very little data, and it looks like it's fine. But then fast forward a few months when the requirements have changed, you don't know what people are actually going to ask about have changed. You got to redo the entire thing for every so often.
Yeah, I could just imagine, because the reality is that you probably want to give it a personality as well. So you want to come up with some words about how it's going to best describe that personality, then kind of give it real life questions, real life users. You never know, you're not going to know what those real life users are going to do, because you obviously want to be very careful if this is going live in front of customers. You don't want your customers to be the dummies, right? And they're trying all these different things. Like we had obviously the disaster of where Microsoft Tray, where it had to be taken down after a couple of hours because the people just completely took advantage of it. Tell me about some of the challenges you've had to overcome within your team, where you might necessarily thought it was a big issue, but suddenly it was more of a challenging issue to overcome than you first thought about.
I think the conversational design is a massive example of that. It's something that's not very obviously a problem, and there's not a massive subset of research in that space, or that subset of what we're doing. Most of the research is about how do we optimize these models, how do we integrate additional features into different models and get our best accuracy or score out of this system. Whereas very little focus is put into, well, what are the labels? What is the design of this conversation? How do you find what the user wants to do based on their language? That is something that's kind of treated arbitrarily in the research space. And that has been a challenge for us and something that we have built a lot of tools around to help us solve. So we use a lot of data-driven decisions to ensure that we're making the correct call on what is an intent and how that should be mapped to by different utterances, and then identify where additional new potential intents are beginning to surface, and then prioritize their development into our system.
If a customer is concerned about introducing a conversational chatbot into their system, their ecosystem, what kind of advice would you give them, and kind of proven case studies that you can kind of maybe share to say what actually the return on investment is worth it, or something that kind of warrants it?
So it depends on what the priorities are of the potential customer or somebody who wants to implement this themselves even. In many cases, it's not quite about efficiency. It does redirect resources from mundane day-to-day tasks, so that the same question comes in 100 times a day. It's very easy to knock them down and identify those and go, okay, well, now these people are freed up to actually be a bit more of a lighter touch on other people who actually need one-on-one support. So people who actually have problems that are complex, that are context specific, and are not integrated necessarily into our own platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So from our point of view, when we develop this for a new customer, we have a kind of a rollout system to ensure quality across the board. We measure things like successful user journeys and sentiment and how the users are interacting, or even the NPS score, Net Promoter Score, get explicit feedback from users. And we have a rollout system that involves a set of beta testers, and then sometimes internal banking people, or people who work or are associated with the bank themselves, and they get early access to our systems. We also employ an agency that we hire to use our bot as if they are real customers and ask real questions for specific regions and locales, to ensure that when we're launching our bot in a different country or region, that we are managing the performance across the board and taking into account different nuances and languages that might not be obvious from the get-go.
Do you think the publicity around AI is at its kind of peak now? Because there's an awful lot of hype about actual abilities and the amount of work that it can get through, and the experience of these systems sometimes really is quite glaring. And there's a lot of great people working in this field, that really believe in conversational interfaces and to get their techniques to kind of improve the quality over time. But is there kind of a concern that there might be a winter in this, or what's your kind of feelings?
I think that the hype is fairly near a peak, but I think the application of it is very much in its infancy. So I think that there is a lot of talk about AI is going to solve all of our issues, and I don't think that's the case. But I do think that the applications of AI are only just beginning. We can see it in our space, where we're one of the only companies in the world who are doing this, and there's many other industries that are not doing this, and that's just taking into account conversational assistants. There's a lot of things that are going on in image recognition and video recognition and self-driving cars. All those kind of applications are flying ahead right now, but there's a lot of other things that are not really being taken yet into an account and being
and that it kind of dovetails into my next question, is where do you kind of see the top kind of 3 business user cases for kind of machine learning in the next 3 years? And do you think deep learning is the future of AI?
Yes. So our platform is built on deep learning almost almost exclusively. We have some rule-based systems in place and some statistical methods to enhance some of our functionality. But for the most part, we are deep learning based. And the data that we're gathering is getting better and better in that we are capturing more and more of the specific use case that we're trying to solve. So what I mean by that is, like, we have, over 500,000 utterances that are training an English model for conversational banking. And that's great, and it gives amazing accuracy across the board. Take into account additional things like context, which I think is really starting to kind of come into itself. Like, how do you manage context? How do you switch context? How do you persist context throughout a system? And get that extra bit of conversational flow. I think that's a massive space for us to move into. And we're doing that ourselves here. The other thing that is important, and I think is only just beginning, is taking all that data and building additional insights from it. So I guess old-fashioned recommender systems, but with the additional context of exactly what you're trying to do for your own problem space. Like, that data does not exist yet.
I think it's so interesting you brought up context. And even if you use the example of using Alexa or Google Home, when you ask Alexa a question, you then have to then repeat the question. So you're like, Alexa, what movies are on at the moment? Then you have to say, Alexa, what time are they at? Rather than with Google, you just say what movies are on, which one, what time, and it's a lot more context driven. And then when you've got users coming onto the site, if you know the context about why they're on the site, because you haven't fixed their problem before, or now you have just fixed their problem, and you're not taking the perspective, their sentiment from previous tweets or social media, there's an awful lot there that you could really take advantage of in terms of one-off offers and more personalized responses.
A huge amount, yeah. And those kind of use cases are hugely valuable for something like a bank. You understand when people are getting paid on a daily or weekly basis or whatever their pay schedule is, and then you're able to recommend things and educate them in their financial wellness and well-being, and allow them to invest their money or to save their money, or a proportion of their money, or we know that you've got a big bill coming up, so we're recommending you to move money into your checking account so you can pay that bill, and so on.
Or the one that I personally find my favorite is if you know that you travel a lot, they can say that, well, actually you're traveling a lot, why don't you use your air miles for your credit card? Or you can actually get bonuses on this, or 6 months payment policy, or travel insurance. There's so many different things that you can link up now. It's just really smart.
Absolutely, and some of them are very light touch too. Like, we just announced a partnership with Visa Canada a few weeks ago, and our use case is one of the most commonly used things is you just inform your card issuer that you're going abroad for a trip, so they don't cancel your card when you use it for the first time you cross the border. And that kind of very soft touch, let's just click a button or type or say into your phone, I'm going abroad next week. That's all you need to do. It's such a powerful, simple use case, but the application is very, very useful.
And the reality is I went to the States quite recently. I rang in advance to say that I'm going to the States. They asked me all the different questions, and then at the end of the statement they said, that's not to say that we won't disconnect your card if we feel that there is potential fraud activity. And what happened when I was in the States? It got disconnected straight away, and I had to call them back. It's just like, what was the whole point, right? So if you do that onto a voice conversational AI, it just saves so much time and bother, and then the customer experience is just so much better, right? And I think for a lot of us now, we just expect amazing customer service. So tell me a little bit about how people can find out a little bit more about some of the great work that you guys are doing at the moment.
Probably the best source for finding out about Finn is our website, Finn.ai. If anybody has any questions specific to data science or wants to link up in the industry, they can always email me directly.
Thank you so much for your time today, Kenneth Conroy, VP of Data Science at Finn.ai.
No problem at all, Mark. Thanks for having me.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.